Live from Radio Row and Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans, this is Roy Kessel for Sports Philanthropy Network, and we're very excited to have with us today Steve Weinreich. Steve is a longtime friend and colleague and currently general counsel for the Minnesota Wild. So, Steve, thanks for taking time to join us today.
Thank you, Roy. It's always good to be with you. Appreciate your time.
We know you've always had a mentality of doing good things in the community. You've been at a variety of organizations and would love to have you take us through the process because each organization handles it so differently. And behind the scenes, there's a lot that goes into that work.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all about giving back. And, from an organizational standpoint, in the organizations I've been fortunate enough to work with, we've had foundations, currently a Minnesota Wild Foundation, before that, Coyotes Charities with the Phoenix Coyotes. So organization wide, we do a lot of things that are structured through a 501c3. We also individually do things to support youth sports and a lot of different community initiatives. And then with the Wild, which is really fun, we have a Heart of the Wild program, which is an employee-based program where we go out and do things and give back. So we hit it on several different levels.
So talk a little bit about how that culture of philanthropy sort of starts from the top. I had a chance to meet Craig a few months ago and listening to him, and you could tell he really had that concept of wanting to give back.
It absolutely does. And Craig is fantastic with that. And I mean, you're right. It does start from the top and it energizes your employee base. It energizes the organization and, and you take time and that's it. I mean, we're very, very fortunate that we have in a position where we can take a half day off and go clean up a river. We can go, support, youth homes. We can do things like that. And the organization supports it, which is huge.
So how does that work, right? You talked about Heart of the Wild, right? And so you're going to let staff out to do work in the community. So mechanically, what does that look like? Is that something that's dictated by the team, or are those requests and causes things that are selected by the individuals?
We have what's called an ICE team, and it's an organization team that goes out and they put together every month. They send out a sheet that says, here are 10 different things that you can participate in, and then it runs department by department, as your schedule permits. But it's highly encouraged, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, that's the most important thing. I mean, it feels good to do it, and and to work with your teammates and maybe get to know someone you wouldn't otherwise work with, and you're doing it for a great cause.
It's always interesting when we see groups of people volunteering, right? There's a different type of bond or relationship that forms because you get outside of that kind of corporate hierarchy and structure that you might have when you're in the office. And it doesn't matter if your title is up here and somebody else's title is a couple levels below, right? When you're working and you're packing food baskets or you're volunteering with kids or you're at a hospital or anything else, right? You're all on a level playing field. You're all giving back.
100%, and I would even go a step further. We do an annual Habitat for Humanity, and our executives, you do not want to give them machine tools or hammers or nails, and then you're on the bottom and you're seeking help from somebody who might be a stagehand, they might be in some other role, but it's you're absolutely right. It is on a different level, and we're just very grateful and blessed that we get to do it.
One of the things that I always like when you talk about that, I think it really just illustrates when people talk about how can we give back, what can we do for the world, what can we do for society. It doesn't require somebody to be at the upper echelon. It doesn't require millions of dollars. It just requires a heart and a desire to want to do things, right? So even with a lot of the players that are here on Radio Row this week, we've been talking about the fact that you don't need to be the biggest name in the game, right? You don't need to be Patrick Mahomes or Jalen Hurts to make a difference, right? There's lots of players, 2,000 players in the NFL. Each and every one of them can go out in their community. They have different skills, they have different interests, and then you can see our wall of philanthropy. We're going to have you and Heather fill out cards here to add to our wall of philanthropy and tell us about what your personal cause is. So, looking at this, tell us what you would want to create an impact for.
Wow. I mean, I'm always big in the children. I mean, that's kind of that's where I always come out, and the youth initiatives, whether it's, we do a lot with Children's Hospital, we do a lot of different things, a lot of programs, but having a 9-year-old, having a blended family with, 4 kids, yeah, that's where my heart goes immediately.
Well, children are always one of those things that attracts a lot of attention, right? Because we see those opportunities, and we know that that's like the future, right? How can we help them build and grow and develop into that future? And so you've been at different places, right? You know, talk maybe about some of the other things you saw when you were with the Coyotes. What were some of the interesting initiatives you did down there?
Well, it's a great question, Roy, because in the Coyotes, you are in a market where, your majority of your fan base did not grow up with hockey. It's like, if being a Wisconsin guy, you probably were born into a Packers family, maybe a Brewers family. People weren't around with the Coyotes. You have to teach people hockey. You had to get out there and show them that hockey is fun. And you're in a market where it's 110 degrees in the summer and it's 60 degrees in January. So how do you do that? You do that through street hockey initiatives. You do a lot of things that are kind of outside the box, trying to grow your sport, whether it's, making ties with the mascot and trying to get people engaged. And it's different in different hockey markets. Is different. I mean, if you go to a market like Detroit or the Chicago Blackhawks, for example, they're an original six team. I mean, they have generation upon generation, and your dad watched, Bobby Hull play or Stan Mikita. We didn't have that, so it's like trying to get people to, follow Shane Doan. The best thing about hockey, though, hockey players are amazing people. They are very, very giving, and they're probably the most down to earth athletes. I'm not biased, but the most down to earth athletes that you'll come across.
Well, you are biased, but you're right. What's interesting, I always find in hockey, unlike many of the other sports, is that the sense of entitlement isn't really there at the same level. You see basketball, right? Those players are identified from a very young age,
Yep.
12, 14 years old. You can already tell who's likely to be an elite player. Football, not as much. Baseball, not as much, but they still get a lot of that treatment. Hockey, most of the guys are just guys, they just want to play hockey. And my
Yep.
favorite example, and you'll appreciate as well, is a guy like Chris Chelios that loves playing hockey so much that when there was a strike, he was going in disguise so that he could get on the ice and play even when he wasn't allowed to by terms of the lockout and play in men's leagues, right? So hockey is an amazing way to bring people together. But it does. People rally around the teams, right? I think that that's one of the beauties we see here on Radio Row every year is even if people aren't Eagles fans or Chiefs fans this year, right? The Super Bowl still is an amazing point of opportunity to bring people together to talk about all of the incredible causes and incredible work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's an amazing event, and until you experience it firsthand, you can't even really put it into words. Kind of everything that goes into it, in all the events, and just even looking around this convention center, it's just amazing.
Steve, thank you for coming on with us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Roy. It's always good to be with you.
And this is Roy Kessel signing off for Sports Philanthropy Network live from Radio Row at Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans. Please remember to live generously.